Under the twin moons of Vera, the arena shimmered like a living jewel carved from silver glass. Thousands of alien eyes glowed in the stands, their voices low, thick with hunger for blood and law. The banners of the royal house of Khalid hung heavy above, their blue flames flickering in the dry wind. The sound of drums rolled like thunder, each beat echoing through the bones of the crowd. Beneath the radiant light stood two figures who could not have been more different. A mountain of obsidian armor and a quiet man of flesh and steel. Sergeant Ash Hale of Earth stood alone on the white sand floor. His combat suit scratched, his visor dim from age, his right arm still bearing the faint burn of plasma scars. The human looked tired but steady, his eyes calm like someone who had seen the worst and had already made peace with it. Across from him towered the alien champion, a creature of impossible height, skin like crystal armor, breathing steam through vents in his throat. He moved with the grace of a predator and the pride of a god. Every motion sent tiny ripples through the air as his body harnessed the field energy around him. High above, in the royal balcony, Princess Saris Khalid leaned forward, her golden eyes fixed on the human. Her maid stood close behind her, Lysa with a sharp gaze, Mari whispering silent calculations, Olin clutching the railing with nervous hands. All three had grown up with Saris in the cold marble halls of Khalid. They had watched many battles before, yet none felt like this. There was something different about the human, something that made the air itself feel uncertain. The regent of Vera raised his staff, its tip glowing with molten symbols. The crowd fell silent. The law was about to speak. By the code of their ancestors, the victor of a sacred duel could claim spoils written in blood and sealed in fate. No one dared to question that law, not even the princess who trembled beneath her royal mask. The regent's voice rang like iron striking stone, declaring the start of the challenge of wards. The alien champion let out a roar that cracked the arena glass. The sand swirled, and his blade, a weapon forged from the planet's core, hummed with death. He lunged forward faster than most eyes could track, but Ash did not move. He only breathed, one quiet inhale as the world slowed around him. When the blade came down, he turned his wrist. The human sword rose, dull, unpolished, meant for survival, not ceremony. And in one clean arc, the alien's charge ended. There was no scream, no struggle, just the soft hiss of sand and the heavy thud of a body divided in two. The arena froze. The twin moons caught the glint of blood turning silver in the dust, a silence too heavy for air pressed down on all life. Even the regent's staff dimmed. Ash lowered his weapon. Breathing steady, his face unreadable, Princess Saris felt her throat tighten. Her heartbeat thundered. She had seen champions fall, but never like this, not with such stillness, not with such control. The human had not fought to win. He had fought to end, every motion precise, every heartbeat calm. She did not understand how mercy and violence could share the same shape. Then the law spoke again, ancient and merciless, echoing through the spires by decree of the ward code. The victor shall claim the royal companions of the defeated house until the stars bear witness to peace. The words fell like stones into a lake. Saris's breath caught, her maids froze. The meaning of the old words burned into them. She and her handmaidens were now bound to the human soldier. The crowd erupted, half in fury, half in awe. Voices rose like storms. Alien nobles shouted curses. Others whispered legends of humans. The Deathworlders who fought gravity itself. Some screamed for the law to be broken. Others demanded it be honored. The regent looked torn. His lips trembled as if to speak defiance, but the law was older than his crown, older than the empire. Ash looked up at the royal balcony. His expression remained still, but there was something in his eyes. Not victory, not pride, only the quiet ache of someone who had never wanted to be there. His words, when he spoke, carried through the silence like a low thunder. I claim no crown, no plunder, no slaves. I claim only peace between our peoples. End your raids on the outer colonies, and I will leave this place forever. The regent said nothing, unable to undo what had been done. The ceremonial seal burned through the air, a ring of blue light that branded reality itself. The law accepted the binding. Saris's hands trembled as she stood, her maids' faces pale, yet she walked forward, every step slow and deliberate. The weight of her family's honor dragging behind her. She stopped before Ash, the sand crunching softly under her boots. Her voice, when it came, was soft, yet it carried through the night. You have taken my champion, human, she said. Now you take me and my kin by the law of Vera. Do you know what that means? Ash met her gaze without blinking. I do, he said simply. It means your people will live. For a moment, neither moved, the air between them heavy with unspoken truths. Around them, the arena lights flickered. The scent of hot glass filled the wind, and in the rafters above, a shadow shifted, silent and patient. The metallic glint of a rifle scope caught the moonlight, its red beam hovering on Ash's heart. Saris turned her head slightly, sensing movement. Her eyes widened just as the rifle powered up. The assassin's breath caught in his throat, waiting for the order, but none came, not yet. The regent's eyes darted toward the shadows and then back to the human below. The law had tied his hands, but not his ambitions. The human and the princess stood in the center of the dead champion's shadow, bound by blood and honor. Neither yet aware that their bond would ignite a fire that no empire could contain. Above them, the stars watched, silent witnesses to the beginning of a story that would shake the galaxy. The royal palace of Vera stood like a shard of light piercing the night sky, its towers made of crystal veins that shimmered with trapped starlight. Beneath those towers walked the man who had defeated their champion, the first human to ever set foot inside the royal court without chains. Sergeant Ash Hale moved in silence, his every step followed by whispers and fearful stares. Guards stood stiff as he passed, their eyes a mix of anger and confusion. Some saw him as a conqueror, others as an omen sent by the stars. Princess Saris Khalid watched from a high balcony as Ash was escorted into the Hall of Oaths, her heart a battlefield of duty and disbelief. She had spent her life studying the law of Vera, yet never once did she imagine being claimed by it. Beside her, her maids stood like shadows of her conscience. Lysa's jaw clenched with fury. Mara's fingers danced across a data slate as she scrolled through legal codes, and Olin's hands trembled as she whispered prayers to the moons. Down below, the court gathered in uneasy silence. Nobles in layered robes, generals in scaled armor, the regent himself upon the throne of obsidian roots. When Ash entered, the hall dimmed, his armor still dusted with sand, the sword at his side clean and quiet. He bowed not as a servant, but as a soldier who respected formality. "I come under the law," he said, his voice deep and calm. "I ask no crown, no throne, only that your armies withdraw from the Terran colonies." Murmurs rippled through the hall like a dark wave. The regent leaned forward, his many eyes gleaming cold. His words were slow and sharp. "You kill our champion, take our royal blood by law, and now speak of peace. You dishonor our world, human, you disgrace our faith." Ash raised his gaze, unwavering. "War is the greatest disgrace," he said. "Your champion chose the blade, I gave him an end without pain. I will not ask forgiveness for mercy." The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. Saris felt a strange shiver run through her. His words struck something deep, something she could not name. The regent's voice broke the stillness. "The law binds you, human. The princess and her handmaids will remain under your charge as wards of the treaty, until the moons turn twice, or the council dissolves your claim." The hall gasped. The princess's breath caught in her chest. Her maids looked to her in horror. She wanted to speak, to defy it, but the law was older than her bloodline, older than her crown. Breaking it would ignite rebellion, and she saw that the regent wanted that rebellion, his smirk barely hidden behind the folds of ritual dignity. That night, under the glowing canopy of crystal leaves, Ash was shown his quarters, a long chamber carved from living stone, cold but clean. He sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes tracing the faint blue lights pulsing through the walls. He thought of his squad back home, names carved into a memorial on Calliope Ridge, men and women who would never see peace. The faces haunted him. They always did when silence came. The door slid open softly. Princess Saris entered. Her robes gleamed faintly, her posture regal yet fragile beneath the weight of circumstance. Her three maids followed close, their expressions torn between anger and duty. Ash stood, unsure whether to bow or salute. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. She looked at him, eyes glowing like amber fire. "I'm bound to you by our law," she replied. "That means I decide where I belong." Her words carried the echo of defiance and sorrow. She studied him closely, the strange human who had cut through her champion as though guided by some unseen will. She expected arrogance, victory, or mockery, but she saw none. There was only exhaustion in his face, a tired strength that felt more human than anything she had known. "Why did you spare my people?" she asked. "You could have demanded tribute, slaves, even worlds, and the law would have given them to you." Ash looked at her for a long moment, then turned toward the window. The night sky shimmered with the lights of orbiting warships. "Because I am tired of graves," he said simply. "I don't need your worlds. Princess, I just want this to stop." Lysa stepped forward sharply, her tone like steel. "You killed our greatest warrior, and now you pretend to care. Your kind calls us savages, yet you come wrapped in blood? Ash turned to her, his eyes steady. I came wrapped in orders, not blood. I don't fight for conquest. I fight so my people can go home, Mara interrupted softly, her curiosity stronger than her anger. She's right about one thing, though, your power. Your precision. It wasn't training alone. What drives you, human? Ash's gaze drifted to his hand, the faint tremor of an old wound. Call it memory, he murmured, when you lose enough. Precision is all you have left. A heavy silence filled the room. Even Lysa had no words. Only Olin, timid and kind, dared to speak again. Is it true that your planet was once like ours? Always fighting. Ash nodded faintly. Yes. And that's why I know how this ends if someone doesn't stop it. Outside, the wind rose like a whispering tide. The great spires hummed as energy lines pulsed through them. Far above, satellites glimmered, unseen eyes watching every move. Cirrus turned her gaze to the stars, her heart unsure whether to hate or admire the man who now held her future. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than the wind. My father will not accept peace. He will try to break this bond if that happens. This law will become your death. Ash looked at her with the calm of someone who had already accepted such things. Then let him try, he said. I've died before, just not officially. Cirrus felt something shift inside her chest, a flicker of emotion she did not want to name. She looked at the maids, each lost in thought, and knew none of them would sleep that night, because none of them understood what the universe had just done, binding them to a man from a death world, a soldier of mercy in a galaxy that had forgotten what mercy meant. Beyond the palace walls, the city murmured with unrest. Torches flickered through the lower quarters, whispers of rebellion slithered through the air, and in a dark chamber deep beneath the spire, unseen hands prepared rifles and blades, the symbol of a cracked star carved on their wrists. The Shard, the faction that lived for blood and vengeance, they spoke one promise to the silence. The human dies before the next dawn. The morning broke like glass over the city of Vera, sunlight bleeding through the crystal towers, turning the air into gold and shadow. From the balcony of his assigned quarters, Ash Hale watched the streets below, watched the soldiers march, the merchants bow their heads, and the fear that traveled through the crowd like smoke. He had seen fear before, on Earth, on the battlefield, in the eyes of dying comrades, but never like this. Never an entire world bound by its own laws. Behind him, the door opened quietly. Mari entered first, her movements precise, holding a hollow slate filled with alien glyphs. Behind her came Lisa, wary as ever, and Olin, her small steps hesitant. Their presence made the room softer, almost human. Though none spoke at first, the silence held too much weight. Finally, Saris appeared, the princess of Khalid, dressed not in jewels but in the plain silver cloth of her station as ward-bound. Her crown was gone, replaced by a single ribbon that marked obedience to law. And shame. Ash turned toward her, his posture calm. Eyes steady, princess, he greeted. His voice deep but gentle. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. You should not stand near the window, she said. The city watches you. Half of them would kill you for what you've done. The other half call you a myth. He gave a faint smile. Myths usually end badly. She studied his face for a moment, then said quietly, not always. Some become legends, outside the palace walls. The sounds of drills filled the air. The alien guards practiced formation combat, their movements precise and theatrical. Ash watched them from the corridor later that day, his soldier's instinct studying every weakness. He saw how their strikes were slow, predictable, too focused on beauty instead of survival. When one guard stumbled, Ash stepped forward, his voice cutting through the air like command. Lower your stance. Keep your center under your shoulders, he said. The guards froze, unused to being corrected by an outsider. In minutes, a crowd formed, whispers following his every motion. Ash picked up a training staff, showing them the rhythm of close-quarters combat the way humans fought in gravity and mud. Efficient, brutal, silent. Saris and her maids watched from a high terrace. Lysa leaned forward, angry and fascinated at once. He moves like he's dancing with ghosts, she muttered. Mare recorded every move on her slate, murmuring about biomechanics. Olin just whispered a soft prayer under her breath, hoping the gods of both worlds were listening. When the training ended, Ash handed the staff back. The guards bowed without thinking. It wasn't respect for rank, it was respect for survival. Saris descended slowly from the terrace, her expression softening against her will. You teach them without arrogance, she said. On my world, warriors hide knowledge. Ash wiped a line of sweat from his neck. On mine, sharing it keeps people alive. For the first time, she smiled faintly. But before the moment could grow, a messenger burst into the hall, his skin pale with fear. He bowed deeply to Cirrus, Princess. There was an attack last night on the outer ring. A storage compound destroyed. Witnesses saw shadows wearing the mark of the shard. Ash's eyes narrowed. The shard, he said quietly. Cirrus nodded. A faction born from old wounds, they believe no treaty with humans can bring honor, and they mean to prove it. That evening, Mari and Ash studied the wreckage data in the control chamber. Holoscreens filled with rotating fragments, energy signatures, and faint transmissions from orbit. Something about the readings felt wrong. The energy spikes weren't from known Varen tech. Ash leaned closer, squinting. This isn't your weapon output. It's too clean, too surgical. Mari looked at him. You mean someone wants it to look like us? Exactly, he said. The palace grew quieter as night fell. Guards took position along the marble corridors, their shadows long and sharp under the torchlight. The moons drifted high and the air turned cold. Sarah stood by her chamber window, staring at the city lights, her reflection faint beside the stars. She felt something heavy in her chest, a question that refused to die. Was this man her captor or her savior? She didn't know. She only knew that the world was changing too fast for her to keep pretending she understood it. In the outer corridors, Olin walked alone, her small frame wrapped in a shawl of blue silk. She carried a basket meant for the barracks, simple things. Tea, cloth, medicine, but she never made it that far. From the shadows, a hand clamped over her mouth, her basket fell, the sound swallowed by the hum of the crystal walls. In seconds, she was gone. Inside the main hall, Ash felt something shift, a soldier's instinct older than reason. He turned his head sharply, eyes narrowing toward the distant corridor. A faint metallic echo reached his ear. Too soft for anyone else to notice, he ran, his boots thundering across the floor, Lisa and Mara behind him, Cirrus following despite the guards' protests. The sound led them to the lower passage, a streak of spilled tea on the ground. A single ribbon from Olin's shawl caught on the doorframe. The alarms never had a chance to sound. An explosion tore through the far side of the palace. The shock wave cracked crystal walls and hurled debris through the air. Smoke filled the corridors. Ash grabbed Cirrus, pulling her behind the stone column as shards rained down like knives. Guards screamed. Shadows moved in the haze. The shard had come, masked and silent, firing plasma bursts that painted the walls red. Ash drew his sidearm, covering Cirrus as the maids ducked for cover. One assassin leaped from the smoke, blade drawn. Ash caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted, and drove his elbow into the alien's throat. The sound was sharp. Final, Lysa, shaking, picked up a fallen blade and stood by the princess. For the first time, fear and courage sharing her face. When the dust cleared, the attackers were gone, leaving bodies and burned marble behind. Olin's ribbon lay on the ground, scorched but whole. Cirrus fell to her knees beside it. Her voice barely a whisper. They took her. Ash looked down the dark corridor where the shadows had vanished, his voice cold and low. Then we take her back outside. The twin moons burned over the city, pale and watching, and from far above, unseen by any eye, a transmission flickered through the orbital network, coded, sharp, and silent. A symbol of a broken star glowing in the dark, and beneath it, the coordinates of their next target, the human himself. The night after the attack, the palace of Vera no longer felt alive. It felt like a tomb wrapped in light. The glass towers hummed faintly under the twin moons, and every corridor smelled of smoke and ash. The royal guards patrolled in silence, their faces tight with fear. No one spoke the name of the group that had struck them, but everyone knew it. The shard had returned, and this time, they had taken someone precious. Ash stood in the shattered hall where the explosion had torn through the floor, dust still drifting like snow. He ran his hand along the burned wall where Olin's ribbon had been found. His jaw clenched, his heart cold behind him. Princess Cirrus watched him quietly, her face pale in the dim light. Her maid stood beside her. Lisa's eyes were red with rage. Mari's hands trembled as she clutched her data slate, trying to find meaning in the chaos. They took her because she was the kindest. Cirrus whispered, her voice breaking. They knew it would hurt the most. Ash turned toward her slowly, his face unreadable. They didn't just take her, he said. They made a declaration. The shard wants this treaty broken. They want war again. He walked to the center of the ruined chamber, his boots crunching on shards of glass. The air shimmered with faint echoes of the blast, energy signatures still dancing in the dust. Maids activated a small scanning device, its light sweeping across the floor. The pattern of the detonation isn't Varen, she murmured, her brow furrowed. It's cleaner, more controlled, alien even to us, someone's helping them. Ash's eyes narrowed. You're saying it wasn't just the shard? She nodded slowly. It's bigger, something in orbit maybe. He looked up through the cracked skylight, where faint lights blinked among the stars, ships moving in the upper layers of atmosphere. He had a feeling the answer was up there. Later that night, in the war chamber beneath the palace, the regent held council. His voice carried sharp and loud. This human brings chaos wherever he walks. Our daughter's maid is taken, our people bleed, and still he dares to stay under our roof. The nobles shouted in agreement, their voices blending into a chorus of venom. Cirrus stood beside Ash, her hand trembling at her side. Father, she said, this is not his doing. It is the shard, and perhaps those who serve them within these walls. The regent's eyes flashed. Do not accuse your own blood. Child Ash stepped forward. Calm but firm, if I were gone, the shard would still rise, but they would have no one to blame for their bloodlust. If you want to find your enemy, stop looking at me and start looking at your own ranks. The regent's hand struck the table. Enough. Human. Your kind teaches insolence instead of respect. Ash met his gaze. Your kind confuses obedience for wisdom. The room went silent. The guards shifted uneasily, and for a brief moment the two stood like shadows of two worlds. Fire against steel. When the council broke, Cirrus followed Ash down the corridor, her voice soft. Why do you always speak as if death doesn't scare you? He paused, his reflection flickering in the mirrored walls. Because I've already met it, Princess, it didn't like me much. She wanted to smile but couldn't, the weight in her chest too heavy. They walked together through the quiet halls, past the crystal gardens where the lights rippled through translucent leaves. Her mind raced with thoughts she could not control. The law had bound them, but something else now linked them. Trust born from battle and loss. In the hours that followed, Mari and Lisa worked through the night, decoding intercepted transmissions from the palace comm grid. Symbols danced on the screens, layered and encrypted until finally Mari gasped. I found it, she said, her voice shaking. A data trail leading off-world to the Severance. The word felt like poison in the air. Even Ash froze. The Severance mercenaries, spies, arms traders, an empire without a flag. They had been known to stir wars between worlds and profit from the ashes. It made sense. They were feeding the shard with tech and information. We can expose them, Cirrus said, hope flickering in her voice. Mara shook her head. Not yet, if we act now. They'll bury the proof. They have access to the entire council net. We need something undeniable, something that forces the law itself to see. Ash folded his arms, his eyes dark. Then we use the law against them. They want to twist it. We make it our blade. Hours later, in the quiet of the archive halls, they found Tovin, the old record keeper who had served Saris's mother. His frail hands trembled as he opened ancient data tablets sealed in crystal. Within those records lay something long forgotten, a clause older than any living ruler. He read it aloud, his voice trembling. If ever the ward bond be tainted by deceit of the crown, the princess may call a living treaty before the law speaker and present proof of corruption. And if truth be found, her house shall stand free. Saris's heart pounded. This could end it, she whispered. This could expose the regent's ties to the Severance, Ash nodded. But it will also paint a target on your back, Princess. The shard won't let you reach that court alive. She met his eyes, steady and fearless. Then you'll have to make sure I do. Before dawn, Lisa burst into their chamber, her voice tight with fear. Olin's location was broadcast through the undermarket. They're selling her like a symbol of vengeance. A slave to the shard's cause, Ash didn't hesitate. Tell me where. Lisa's voice cracked. The Undercity. Where light doesn't reach. The place we outlawed generations ago. Ash turned to Saris, his voice low. You stay here. No, she said. You'll die down there alone. I'm coming with you. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. There was no time to argue. The faint light of morning crept through the cracks of the city, and as they prepared to descend into the underworld, Ash glanced up at the distant sky, where Severance ships drifted unseen behind the clouds. Every instinct told him the next fight would not just decide Olin's fate. It would decide the truth of everything they thought they understood about this war, and about each other. The Undercity of Vera breathed like a wounded beast. Dark tunnels pulsing with dim red light, steam coiling from vents, and voices whispering through broken metal halls. Every sound carried the weight of danger. Ash Hale walked at the front, his rifle low and his senses high. Behind him followed Princess Ceres, her robes bound tight to keep from dragging through the sludge, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Beside her moved Lisa and Mare, each step cautious but driven by something deeper than fear. They were here for Olin, and nothing else mattered. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, walls slick with oil, the scent of ozone and decay filling their lungs. Mara's scanner flickered weakly, faint signals leading them toward the old freight bay. "That's where they're keeping her," she whispered. They turned a sacred burial site into a slave market. Ceres clenched her fists, her voice breaking. "My people built these tunnels to shelter from war, and now they sell innocence inside them." As they neared the bay, the echoes of the crowd reached them, harsh voices trading numbers and names. The faint whimper of captives chained in glass cells, blue lights blinking across the cavern. Alien traders of every kind surrounded the market, their eyes hollow, their greed alive. Ash motioned for silence. His face hard. "We move quiet," he murmured. "No mistakes. One sound and they'll scatter." Ceres nodded, her heart hammering so loud she feared they could hear it. She spotted Olin through the crowd before anyone else, her maid's pale form trapped behind a glowing barrier, her wrists bound, her eyes swollen from crying but still alive. That sight tore through her like fire. Ash followed her gaze and froze. His grip on the rifle tightened. "I see her," he whispered. They moved along the edges, blending with shadows. Lisa stole a dagger from a guard's belt without being seen. Mara worked on a small control pad, bypassing locks through stolen data signals. Ash waited for her nod before stepping out, his voice calm but firm. "Enough." The sound of his tone cut through the crowd like a blade. Every head turned. The traders froze, the auctioneer, a scarred alien with eyes like molten metal, sneered. "Human, this isn't your world. Walk away before it becomes your grave." Ash's eyes met his, steady, cold. "I've already seen my grave," he said, then moved. The next moments unfolded like lightning. Ash fired once, hitting the generator core powering the barrier. Sparks burst through the room, smoke filling the air. Ceres rushed forward, breaking Olin's bonds with trembling hands. Her maid fell into her arms, weak but breathing. "I knew you'd come," Olin whispered. But the market erupted into chaos, traders grabbing weapons, alarms blaring through the tunnels. Lisa and Mara covered Ceres as Ash took the front line. Plasma bolts streaked through the smoke. The air burned hot and sharp. Ash's movements were precise, efficient, every shot measured, every motion a dance between life and death. Lisa, fierce and fearless, struck one assailant down with her stolen blade, while Mara used hacked drones to project false signals and confuse the enemy. When the smoke began to clear, the walls trembled with a deeper sound, heavy footsteps echoing through the tunnels, armored soldiers of the Shard marching in, their insignia glowing red under the low lights. Their leader stepped forward, his armor carved with the cracked star symbol, his voice like a growl. "You shouldn't have come here, human. You could have lived as a myth. Now you die as a lesson." Ash stepped forward slowly, lowering his rifle, his tone even. "You don't want to fight me," the Shard captain laughed. "We were born to," and raised his weapon. But Ceres's voice cut through the noise, her words clear and furious. "You dare speak of birthright while serving cowards who sell our blood?" Her voice carried a strange power, echoing in the stone. Even the soldiers hesitated. Something in her tone awakened a memory of the old royal laws, of oaths sworn to protect her line. Ash used that moment, striking like lightning, disarming the captain and driving him to the ground, his blade flashing once, clean and silent. The soldiers froze as their leader fell. Ash's voice rose, hard as thunder. "You fight for ghosts, I fight for the living. Tell your masters this. Peace isn't theirs to sell." He turned to Ceres. "We have to move," she nodded. Pulling Olin to her feet, Mara and Lisa covered the rear. The group vanished into the tunnels as alarms wailed behind them. The Shard regrouped, furious, swearing vengeance. But by the time they reached the market, it was empty. They surfaced hours before dawn, the first light of morning creeping across the crystal towers. Olin weak but alive in Ceres's arms. Ash stood beside them, his armor scorched, his eyes dark with exhaustion. Yet when he looked at the rising sun, there was something almost gentle in his face. Mara approached, holding a burned data core she had salvaged from the tunnels. "This contains everything," she said. "Proof of severance funding, direct links to the Regent's code." Ceres took the core, her fingers shaking. "This could end it all." Ash nodded slowly. "It will, but not without a fight." Lisa looked toward the palace in the distance, its towers glowing like fire. "They'll call us traitors," she said quietly. Ash answered without hesitation. "Then we tell the truth louder than their lies." The wind carried the smell of smoke and salt through the air. The city below awakening, unaware that its fate had shifted before sunrise, and as the first rays touched the palace spires, Sarah stood tall beside the human who had changed her destiny, her voice soft but certain. "If this law was meant to break us, we will use it to rebuild the world." Ash looked at her, the corners of his mouth lifting faintly. "Then let's start rebuilding, Princess, because the real war begins now." The dawn over Vera was blood red, the kind of color that made the sky look like it was holding its breath. From the highest spires to the lowest streets, every sound carried tension. The city knew something was coming. In the great plaza below the royal tower, the people gathered, drawn by rumors that whispered through the night like ghosts. They said the princess would defy her father. They said the human would face death at sunrise. And they said the law itself would decide who lived and who didn't. Ash stood in chains, the metal biting into his wrists. His uniform torn from the escape, the cold air stung his skin, but his eyes were calm, almost too calm. He looked not at the guards or the crowd but at the horizon, as if waiting for something only he could see. Around him stood ranks of soldiers, their armor glinting under the light of the rising moons, and above the regent watched from his balcony, his face carved from stone, his voice loud enough to echo through the court. "This human," he declared, "has violated our peace, killed our own, and stained the honor of Vera with lies. By the law of the crown, his bond shall be broken in blood." The crowd roared, some with fury, others with grief, many simply afraid. Sarah stood beside the law speaker, her gown a deep white, the mark of sacred judgment. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she tried to steady her breath. Beside her, Lisa gripped the hilt of her hidden blade. Mare held the proof in her trembling hands, and Olin leaned weakly against her sister's shoulder, her eyes fixed on Ash. The law speaker raised his staff, the crystal at its tip glowing faint blue, his voice slow and ancient, the words of the old code flowing like a song. "By the will of the treaty and the bond of law, if truth or falsehood cloud this court, let the living treaty be called forth. Let the seal be opened by proof and sacrifice." Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "I invoke the living treaty," she said, her words ringing through the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the regent's eyes flickered with unease. She continued, her tone gathering power. "This bond was born not of conquest but of deceit. I present proof of the severance and your hand in their treachery." Mare activated the data core. Holographic light spilled across the plaza. Images flashed, transmissions, weapon shipments, payments coded in the regent's name. The crowd gasped. Soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. The regent's composure cracked for a moment. His voice thundered. "Lies forged by the human's machines. No human speaks the truth of Vera." Ash lifted his head, his voice deep and steady. "I speak of no world but my own. I've seen what greed makes of leaders. It's the same everywhere." He looked at Saris. "You brought light to this place, don't let him bury it." The regent gave a sharp gesture. Guards raised their rifles. The law speaker shouted for order, but his words drowned under the hum of power weapons charging. Lysa stepped forward, standing before Saris, her voice fierce. "You'll have to kill us all to silence the truth. The first shot never came from the ground. It came from the sky." A beam of red fire cut through the plaza, striking the edge of the spire court. The explosion ripped through the air. People screamed as debris rained down above. Ships appeared, black and sharp, bearing the mark of the severance. They weren't here for justice, they were here to erase it. The plaza descended into chaos. Ash tore free from his chains, metal snapping under brute force and adrenaline. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and pulled Saris down behind the broken pillars. "Stay low," he shouted. The air filled with the whine of engines. Severance drones descended like metal vultures, raining plasma bolts across the crowd. Mara ducked behind the rubble, trying to protect the data core, her voice shaking. "They're erasing the evidence. They're hitting our network from orbit." Ash's voice was calm despite the storm. "Then we make sure the people remember before it's gone." He stood, firing at the drones one after another, his aim surgical. Every movement deliberate. Saris tried to pull him back, but he only smiled faintly. "You can't kill truth with fire." "Princess," the crowd was screaming now. The regent shouted orders that no one followed. Panic broke ranks. Guards turned their guns toward the sky instead of the human. For the first time in centuries, Vayrans fought beside a Terran. Lysa and Olin helped Saris to her feet, the princess's white gown stained with soot and blood. She looked at her father, still standing on the balcony, defiant even as the city burned. And in that moment, something inside her broke. The fear, the obedience, all of it turned to fire. She grabbed the law speaker's staff and raised it high, her voice cutting through the roar of battle. I, Saris Khaled, by the will of law and the living seal, declare my father unfit to rule. The bond remains not as chains but as peace. The human fights beside us, not above us. The staff flared with light, the seal engraved within it glowing gold, a symbol projected across the sky, visible to every ship, every station. The living treaty had been invoked. The people paused, even the soldiers hesitated. The severance ships above flickered as the symbol pulsed through their networks, disrupting their command codes. Ash leaped onto the broken steps. Slashing at a descending drone, sparks showered the air. He looked back at her, breathing hard. You did it, princess. She met his gaze. Tears mixing with smoke, you did too. But the victory wasn't whole yet above. A figure stood on the edge of the regent's balcony, cloaked and still, the glint of a rifle barrel catching the sunlight. Saris's eyes widened as she realized what was about to happen. She shouted his name. Ash turned, too late, the rifle fired. The sound cracked the sky open. He felt the impact like thunder through his chest. The world slowed. The staff in Saris's hand trembled as light exploded around her. The seal shattered into 1,000 fragments of glowing dust that rained down like stars. Ash staggered, still standing, still breathing. And then the light swallowed him. The crowd fell silent. The battle paused as if the world itself held its breath. Saris caught him before he fell, her voice breaking into the silence. Ash, please stay with me. The war had stopped for one heartbeat, but the cost of that heartbeat would echo forever. The world went silent as Ash fell into Saris's arms, the sound of battle fading into a long echo that seemed to stretch across eternity. The light of the shattered seal still drifted around them like falling stars, soft gold dust settling on his blood-streaked armor. His breath came slow and uneven, each inhale a quiet struggle against the darkness closing in. Saris pressed her hand to his wound, her voice shaking. Stay with me, please. Don't you dare leave now. Ash tried to speak, but no words came. Only a faint smile flickered across his lips, his eyes finding hers through the smoke and chaos. You kept your promise, he whispered. Then his gaze dimmed, the heat leaving his skin. Saris's heart broke with the sound of his last breath. Her scream tore through the air, louder than the ships, louder than the fire. It silenced even the drones above. Around them, the battlefield froze, soldiers, citizens, and rebels alike watching the princess kneel beside the fallen human. The law speaker dropped to one knee, murmuring the old rites, but Saris wasn't listening. She could feel something strange in the air, the golden fragments of the seal still glowing, pulsing as if the law itself refused to die. She lifted her head, her tears catching the light, and the fragments began to rise, swirling around them in slow motion. Ash's blood touched the cracked floor, spreading into the lines of the ancient sigil beneath the court. Energy awakened, the seal's old magic answering his sacrifice. The living treaty was not just words. It was an oath bound to the will of the victor's heart, and his heart still fought. The light spread outward, bathing the plaza in radiance. The severance ships above flickered, their systems collapsing under a wave of raw signal. Their weapons fell silent. The sky cracked with thunder, and one by one the ships fell, burning trails across the clouds like falling stars. Saris clung to him as the light wrapped around them both, her tears glowing on her cheeks. The law speaker's voice rose over the storm. The law lives, the treaty breathes, the sacrifice has been made. He is bound not in death but in eternity. The crowd knelt as the words echoed. For the first time since the beginning of their empire, Vera's law changed, rewritten not by bloodline or decree, but by mercy. When the light finally faded, Ash lay still but not cold, his heartbeat slow, his breath shallow but steady. Saris cradled his head against her chest, trembling as she felt life still there. Faint and fragile but real. She looked up at the throne where the regent stood frozen, disbelief twisting his face. The crowd had turned on him now, their voices rising, their anger no longer afraid. The soldiers who once served the regent dropped their weapons one by one. They knelt, and when Saris stood, they chanted her name. Her father stepped back as the law speaker raised his staff toward her. Princess Saris Khaled, by the living treaty and the will of your people, your reign begins. The old crown burned to ash on the regent's head as the gold seal formed again in Ceres's palm. Shining like a new dawn, she turned to her maids, Lysa standing proud despite the wounds across her arm, Mare holding the recovered data core like it was sacred, and Olin weak but smiling through her tears. They surrounded her and the wounded soldier who had changed everything. Hours later, as the fires dimmed and the city began to breathe again, Ceres sat beside Ash in the quiet of the royal terrace. The medics had done what they could. His chest was wrapped in pale silver cloth, his pulse stronger, his face peaceful. She watched him in silence, the night around them alive with rebuilding, voices rising from below as humans and Vayrans worked side by side to clear the wreckage. Lysa brought a small lantern and placed it near them. Its flame soft and steady. "He saved all of us," she said quietly. Ceres nodded, but her eyes stayed on Ash. "He saved us because he believed peace was worth dying for." Mare leaned against the railing, her tone weary but hopeful. "Then maybe it's time we prove he was right." The stars stretched endless above, and in that silence Ceres finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "When he wakes, tell him the world he wanted is being built. Tell him the war ended because one man refused to keep fighting." Her words caught in her throat, but she smiled through the ache. The wind rose gently, carrying the scent of rain through the city. The storm that had begun with his fall now washed the blood from the marble streets. Banners of the living treaty fluttered from the spires, their golden symbol reflecting in the whetstone below. For the first time, the capital of Vera looked like it belonged to the living, not to the ghosts of the past. Ash stirred in his sleep, his lips parting slightly, a faint sound escaping like a dream. Ceres leaned closer, her voice soft and trembling. "I'm here, you're home." His fingers twitched weakly, and for the first time she let herself hope. As dawn broke over the horizon, the city awoke to a new era. Humans and Vayrans stood together under the same light. The Severance network burned out across the sky, their reign of chaos finally broken. And somewhere deep within the palace, a human soldier slept beneath a banner of peace he had carved with his own hands. Ceres stood at the balcony, the wind lifting her hair as she looked out at the horizon, the same horizon he had once watched. She closed her eyes and whispered to it, "Thank you, ash hail of earth. The world remembers, the light remembers, and the stars remember." And as the sun rose higher, its warmth touched the towers, the city, and the silent figure resting within. The war that began in fear ended in faith. The galaxy had seen what one human heart could do, and it would never forget the day he turned law into mercy and death into life. The end